was a big time. It was a big time weekend for the Bills. They got a lot better than they were prior. But beforehand, I got to introduce everybody. First things first, Mr. Thomas Frank Carr, TFC. TFC, how you doing, man?
Doing great. Honestly, I'm glad that I was able to sleep last night after the draft. So having a good night's sleep is always a nice thing.
Absolutely. And EJ Daniels, EJ, how you doing?
What's up, Bills Mafia? Love the opportunities to take time and talk draft.
Absolutely. And Mr. NFL pedigree himself, James Mallory. James, thank you for joining us tonight, man.
What's up? What's up? Thank you for having me. Let's get to it. I'm ready. I'm excited, John.
Oh, I'm sorry, bro. But last but certainly not least, Greg Boucher. Greg, it's a pleasure to get on here with you, man. How you doing?
Oh man, I'm having draft withdrawals, man. 4 months straight of talking draft, and it's all come to a culmination the last couple of days. So I need to start talking draft again, man.
Oh yeah, and we
don't do 2022 mock, please.
It's already in the works, man. It's already in the works.
I mean, you guys are going crazy with the mock draft sometimes. I would not be shocked if I saw it out by the end of the weekend. But, the first pick, Gregory Rousseau, I was shocked. It wasn't necessarily what I wanted. I wasn't a huge fan of it, but as the time has gone on, I've watched film, I've warmed up to it. I'm excited to hear what you guys think about it. Greg, first things first, what do you think of the Bills' 30th overall pick, Greg Rousseau?
Like I told you earlier off air, I have to separate between what I wanted the Bills to do and which direction I would have went, and just analyzing the pick and the direction and looking at the draft in a whole and what they actually did with it. So off the rip, I think like you and a lot of other people, I was a little hurt by it. I didn't think Rousseau was the best player available for what we wanted to get done. I think there were some other players on the board that made more sense to me right there. And I think if we were going for a raw, high potential, high ceiling guy who could help us out, I thought Owe made better sense at that point. But like I said, stepping away from it, letting it kind of soothe over me, I've warmed up to it because now I can look at the draft as a whole and see what else they've done to kind of make sense out of that first round pick. So I guess if you're looking at Russo just as a player, he offers a ton of upside. At one point, he was my number one rated pass rusher edge guy. 6'7", long arms. He's strong. He's so raw though, and he's got so much to learn. But I think we all got a little bit of inspiration when Bruce Smith reached out to him and basically said, "I'm going to try to take you under my wing, kid." So there's a bright future there for Russo, I think.
Absolutely. TFC, what were your thoughts of the Bills' first round pick?
I liked it a lot more after the second round pick, truthfully, because there's a balance there of a guy that I think while I liked Basham, I liked other guys more, and I didn't like Russo. I didn't like his film. I didn't think someone's got to win to the outside. So that's really, and this kind of came up, and Brandon Bean pushed back pretty hard when somebody asked, Gregory Rousseau does not have a lot of wins to the outside of the tackle. A lot of the stuff that he got when you referenced the 15.5 sacks, a lot of those were against guards and centers and guys that aren't the elite talents on the outside. So while that's a good thing because he has the positional flexibility to reduce down in, and so does Carlos Basham, someone's got to rush to the outside. Someone has to win to the edge. And I understand they have AJ Epinesa. I understand they have Jerry Hughes. And the position flexibility is great. But Basham, I think, when he played at Wake Forest last, was heavier than Ed Oliver. So, you're going to have the same body type across the entire formation of guys that are just 290 to 287 in the middle there, 280. And they all just run the pass. They all just have, high motors and power. The Bills don't value speed rushers, which is apparent after all this time. But still, when you have a speed rusher with elite traits like Jason Owe there, and you opt for the guy who is the power end, I'm not surprised, but it still is, I like speed. So I was a little disappointed by it. But upside, everything Greg said, it's all there. He could be phenomenal, but it's just such a projection.
Such a projection. And you touched on how they might not like speed rushers, which kind of makes me want to think about how they feel about Jerry Hughes after this weekend. But we'll talk about that in a minute. EJ, what were your thoughts of Gregory Rousseau and how he may impact this football team?
So if you go back to what Bean had said at the beginning of the draft, what he said was, "I'm drafting for the future." That's exactly what he said. So he already prepared us as to what direction he was going to go in the draft, and he kind of went in the direction. He did exactly what he was going to say, and when you saw the Russo pick, you had Bills Mafia as a collective scratching their head saying, okay, I can get behind this, but as we know, like Greg had stated in TFC, we've been talking draft for the last 4 months, and Gregory Rousseau is actually a pick that we studied in depthly at the beginning of our draft show, and what we figured out was he is probably not going to contribute right away. But if Brandon Beane is telling me that, hey, I have a plan in the future and this guy is a part of this plan, then I have no choice but to trust him because Beane has given me no inkling that I shouldn't. So the whole thing is he probably will not contribute this year. But down the line, if you're telling me that with coaching he can be a top 10 edge, then I'm with this pick. Then this pick was a great pick. But as I keep telling people on Twitter, I have to still go incomplete because there's so many wide ranges of outcome. We haven't seen him play in a year. What he's been doing is he's been down in Florida at Exos, working with one of the best D-line coaches in Chuck Smith, refining his pass rushing game. And we're hoping with NFL coaching, he can only get better. So I'm going to say I am incomplete on the pick. I don't hate the pick, but we have to wait a couple years down the line to get the return that Bills Mafia is looking for on this pick.
Absolutely. And James, what were your thoughts of Gregory Rousseau?
I was excited. Initially, everybody knows I was on the Travis Etienne thing. As a weapon for the team, I was big on that. But after I thought about it and looked into it and just kind of sat back and kind of observed, I'm like, I think that makes a lot of sense for us in the future. We have a team set up now to where we can afford to draft somebody to really develop them and be able to put them with coaching for a year and be able to, put them under veterans. So we're not putting everything on the shoulders like, hey, come revive our pass rush. We're not doing that. What we're saying is, okay, we know you opted out of 2020 and you've been working with, a pass rush specialist. Somebody's going to really, really help you and really, really, really fine tune those skills. Now you're going to come, you're going to put the pads on. You're going to really get back at it, get it cracking for, under these guys, and we're not putting a ton of pressure on you. So whatever he gives us this year is a bonus. Now, 2022, he's going to hit the ground running. I mean, I think how they're doing things is going to pay huge dividends for the future of this team. I mean, you have to look at it that way. I mean, with Jerry Hughes and Mario Addison, obviously they're going to run that back. Everybody wanted to upgrade, but what was really out there that was a guaranteed upgrade without having to pay King's ransom. So I love what they did. His youth, I'm all for it. Especially, with his size, we were missing size for a little bit. Let's not forget, we got thrashed in the run game quite a few times in the last couple of seasons. So now they adding some bulk there to say, okay, you're not going to just run over us like team like Kansas City did. I mean, let's get after it. I love what they did.
I like the direction that they were going, and I really felt a lot better, similar to how TFC said earlier in the show. I felt a lot better about the Gregory Rousseau pick after their second-round pick, Carlos Basham. Now, we're going to get into Carlos Basham real quick, but I want to get my thoughts on Rousseau. Beforehand, Rousseau pick, I didn't like it because, in my opinion, I felt like the Bills really needed an instantaneous impact player at that 30th pick, and I thought that that would have been what was the best decision. But you look at the upside, you look at the potential, all these words that we've been mentioning throughout this show, and it's all there. Obviously, all the tools are there for Gregory Rousseau to succeed, and it's just a matter of him putting it together and him getting the proper coaching and executing on his potential. And, if the Bills will see the fruition of that potential, I don't know. Time will tell, and we'll see. But what I do know is I felt a lot better after they selected Carlos Basham, particularly because Carlos Basham is NFL ready today. He's ready to step into this defensive line. He's ready to make his impact. He's ready to make his presence known. Having a bigger defensive end, having that guy that can play all over the defensive line is a huge reason why they brought him here. It's a huge reason why they brought Gregory Rousseau and Carlos Basham here. They can do so many different things with this defensive line and the fronts that they can run and the various exotic pressures they can bring. I'm really happy that they added two new tools to their pass rushing tool set because it's something that this defense desperately needed. There's only one of two things that I felt like was going to elevate the Bills defense to the point where I feel like they can win a Super Bowl with the combination of their offense. And that was either adding a stud number 2 cornerback or bolstering their pass rush in a significant way. And I wasn't really sure that Gregory Rousseau was going to be the answer to bolstering that pass rush the way I felt like they did. But I do feel like with the combination of Rousseau and Carlos Bastian, that not necessarily in 2021 itself, but for the years beyond, I think this pass rush is going to be fine. There's not going to be nearly as much concern for the pass rush as there was in 2020. We all talked about how bad the pass rush was at times, how bad the presence was of the Bills pass rush at times. Greg, how do you feel Carlos Bastian will help the Bills pass rush? And you also said that it made you feel better that they picked Bastian after Rousseau when we were talking behind the scenes. Can you touch on that a little bit?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, you look at Russo, like we said, I think we're all in agreement, unless there's just some sort of miraculous transition this offseason, that Russo is a back burner player right now. We're going to let him sit. He's probably not going to contribute much next year. And that kind of hurt me a little bit because I felt like we got to get something now. We have to address the pass rush now. And we went and got Carlos Bastian. It kind of lessened the blow of the Russo thing, where it didn't matter that he was a first-round pick anymore. He's like, we have that guy in waiting now. We have this 6'7", pass rush guy in waiting. Carlos Bastian, if you go and watch his film, he has tremendous pass rush capabilities.
Yep.
I mean, he's got a diverse set of pass rush moves. He has this quick swim, slides his hips inside, and he just stuns offensive line. So he's a 4-year, 5-year guy at Wake Forest. He's coming into the NFL ready. And I'll put his pass rush ability up against Kwity Paye's, up against Jalen Phillips, because I think he's got that kind of repertoire that he has a diverse. Hey. There it is. Yeah, sorry. He really does. He has a diverse set of pass rush moves. And I think those moves are NFL ready. Now, obviously, there's some deficiencies in his game. I don't think he plays as powerful as his body type would indicate. And those are things that could be hashed out. But if you're looking at his impact as a pass rusher, I don't expect Carlos Bastian to come in and play, the lion's share of downs. But I think they're going to find a spot for him to play. I think he's going to be a formational package type guy, get a couple series here and there. But I think he's going to be impactful in those series, because I think his pass rush, with his body type and his ability, is able to produce in the NFL, especially when you put the other pieces around him. Now, you know how I feel about Jerry Hughes, but I think I'm saying, I think if Jerry Hughes is going to come out and give us his last hurrah, having a player like Bastian opposite of him, who has a different skill set, a different type of rush, he could help Jerry Hughes, and Jerry Hughes could help him at times. And I'm very inspired by that going forward.
I like the bird dog theory. Did I give you my bird dog theory before about Jerry Hughes?
Lay it on me.
So Jerry Hughes is really good. He's the bird dog that goes and he gets the quarterback out of the pocket. He gets the ducks in the air. You need somebody to bring the ducks down. So that's what they got in the last 3 years. They got 3 other young pass rushers. Now, it's going to apply to probably 1 year given the position influx of talent at edge defender. But he was at his best when Mario Williams and Kyle Williams were there, and they were able to corral the quarterback. Now you got Gregory Rousseau, who can fall into all of his sacks, and it'll be just like at Miami. It'll be perfect.
Yeah. Just put out that big long arm and start some production.
Yeah.
No, that is something he does well, though, is use those long arms to play the run. He can do that, and that was on film a lot. He was on that edge using his long arms to stack up tight ends, stack up tackles, and use those long arms to cover the edge and set the edge in the run game. He can do that, and he probably – I can see him contributing there in that. And we know the Bills have been sorely lacking in run defense the past 2 seasons.
We're going to have to talk about both Mario Addison and Jerry Hughes both before the show's over. But before that, James, how did you feel about Carlos Bastian?
I didn't know much about him, so I had to do a little research, and I found out that at one point in time he was projected to be a solid first-round pick. You guys that really, really dig into the draft, you guys know that, obviously. I just didn't know much about him, and I looked into him, I'm like, wow. So it was great value in that pick, and then, they saying that he's very polished, and he's ready to come in and play some snaps right away. So I'm like, hey, I'm all for it. If he can come in and help us right away, let's get it. Especially you mix him up with, obviously the 2 veterans, and then, man, I mean, The young boy Rousseau, you put him in there. I love what we got on that D line. I mean, the defensive end position could look totally different this year, even rolling out Mario Addison and Jerry Hughes again. So I'm excited about it. And he has size because I've seen at times sometimes it was just a stalemate at the end position in the run game, and that bothered me. Being a running back, I look at it a lot. But, we need guys to come in and just blow people up at the defensive end sometimes. Like, listen, just wreak havoc and just blow the run game up. And we didn't have it a lot. This guy looks like he can bring that. You just tackle for loss. We need that. We need dudes to just blow it up and just come with an attitude, and they got some weight with them. So let's get it, man. I think we might have something there. Might have a steal.
I do think they'll ask him to lose weight, though. I think that's one thing where he was a little heavy in college, and just like AJ Epinesa, I think that lowered his value because he didn't have that sort of prototypical look about him, and the Bills are great at finding value in pass rushers that other guys turn aside because they aren't Jason Oweh. So I do think that there might be some positional tweak as far as losing a little bit of weight going into his rookie season, because that's the same thing
they
they did
plan
with
on moving him around. They plan on moving him around. They might want him to play around 280. They want to play him at the 3 tech a little bit. They may keep him there, depending on what he brings to the table.
I think I saw a picture of him running for his pro day on someone's thing, and the dude was chiseled. The dude, I mean, I was shocked because he said you look at his game film, he looks a little chubby. He looks got a little baby weight there, and there was a picture of him running his 40, and he looked like a man-child. So I don't know if he's been doing something since the season's been over, but he looked great in that picture. He was in shorts, shirtless, and the dude was in shape. So I don't know if that's been since the end of the season or what, but it definitely made me very happy to see that physique on him.
So TFC, what do you feel Carlos Basham is adding to the Bills' defensive line?
I think he's a good pass rusher with, like we talked about, a lot of good moves and intelligence at the position and that physicality you're looking for. Because that is one thing with the length and the strength. They're looking for guys that play the run as well as they play the pass. They want their defensive line to control the flow of the game and to make sure that the secondary in coverage doesn't have to cover for 4 seconds. And I think he can do all of those things for you. My biggest problem with Basham was that I thought he was a little tight. I don't think he bends the edge super well, which is my one complaint about both him and Rousseau is who's rushing the edge. Of these guys, they're both power guys. They're both guys that win, with things that aren't speed. And at some point, someone's got to threaten the edge to open up, the 3 technique to go against one-on-one on guards. And if you don't have that threat, you're played completely differently. That being said, I think he can play inside, outside. He has great hand usage, all those things that Greg talked about. There is one thing that Basham does give them as well, along with AJ Epinesa, and that is, as EJ likes to say, cheap labor, because next year, this number is important, 33.9. That's what they're going to be paying their safeties and Tre'Davious White in 2022. So they need to find a way to keep the production up at the edge defender position in the defensive line and also pay the back end. So that's another thing we talk about, lessons we learn from the Super Bowl. As EJ's pointed out before, they have a lot of rookie defenders in the secondary playing really well. They're all on their rookie contracts, so they can pay Ndamukong, they can pay Shaquille Barrett, they can pay Jason Pierre-Paul, and the veteran is the veteran defensive line is the strong suit, and the secondary are the young guys. The Bills are going to be doing the inverse of that over the next couple of years, but they need to have that balance, and that's what these guys do.
Yeah, absolutely, TFC. Just to go off your point there, because it was something on my mind as well, because you're seeing the team transition from having that availability that you have when you have a quarterback on a rookie contract. And Josh Allen, he's coming up to that extension, and you also see that, Jerry Hughes is making $11.5 million per year. Mario Addison made $10 million last year. They're not going to be able to pay defensive ends what they were prior when Josh Allen wasn't on a rookie contract. So having 3 cost-controlled assets at the defensive end position, especially when you're probably going to lose 2 older players within the next 2 years, that's very important, especially considering, there's not a lot of defensive ends under contract with the Bills after this season. And this was definitely somewhere they needed to add more than one piece, I felt like, and F.A. Obado wasn't really just that one piece, in my opinion. I was glad they got 2 edge rushers in this draft. EJ, how did you feel about the addition of Carlos Basham? Excuse me.
So when I looked at the Carlos Bastian pick, I analyzed it from more of a macro perspective, and what my thought process was is, what were they going to do to beat the Chiefs, right? And so they got Gregory Rousseau with the first pick, and then they came back again and got, Carlos Basham. And so what I was thinking of is, I said, hey, if you thought that your pass rush was the reason that you didn't beat the Chiefs, we can all agree that they had to do one of the other. They either had to bolster the back end or bolster the line. And what they decided to do was bolster the line. So if you feel like the line is the reason why that they didn't get the pressure on the Chiefs that they needed to be, then throw the kitchen sink at it. And that's what I'm all for teams doing that. If you think that these two players are going to help you down the line to compete with Patrick Mahomes and killing the Chiefs D line, throw the kitchen sink at it. So when I saw them get Carlos Basham, I love that pick just because they are saying, hey, we are going to generate more pass rush even if it kills us. So we're going to draft this DN, and we're going to draft a project DN, and we're going to make them the best they can possibly be. They signed Effie Udoba, they got Addison, they got Jerry Hughes, and like they were saying that the DNs could look very different in the next couple years, but they are throwing the kitchen sink at DN, and they had to do something to combat the Chiefs, and they did something, and I appreciate that move, and I like what they did.
Yeah, I agree with you 110%. This defensive line, I just felt like it was incomplete prior to this weekend. And then coming out of it, I feel a lot better about what the Bills have in their front seven going forward in comparison to last year. Because you have Star Lotulelei returning, you have Ed Oliver, and that's the one player that I'm excited to see how these two selections impact. I'm excited to see how the return of Star Lotulelei and the addition of Gregory Rousseau and Carlos Basham will help Ed Oliver transition into year 3 after, it wasn't an underwhelming second year, but he was playing out of position a lot. There was a lot of times where he wasn't really put in a position to succeed. And now having these players, having these assets, having these tools in your tool chest for your defensive line is going to give you the availability for Ed Oliver to go out there and do what he was drafted to Buffalo to do. And that's to wreak havoc at that 3 technique position. And I'm really excited to see what this whole defense, I really am, like, just seeing what this defensive line, this front can do. I'm excited to see just, what Leslie Frazier and Sean McDermott can come up with for this defensive line and how creative they can be. Because, we saw towards the end of the year last year, they got very creative with their blitz packages. Now, maybe you're not going to see as many blitz packages considering you can maybe get pressure with your front 4. So there's a lot of impact that these two players could have this year, specifically Carlos Basham, Gregory Rousseau. You're looking at a player that could potentially be a franchise defensive end. You never know, or he could bust. So speaking of another player that had potential that they drafted in the 3rd round, a monster of a man. And I want to talk to Greg about him because Greg's a fellow offensive lineman, and I don't know how he feels about Spencer Brown. Defense. Oh, I'm sorry. Fellow lineman.
Don't put that on him.
I'm a big fan of the trenches on both sides.
How did you feel about Spencer Brown, considering he's 6'8"?
I'll tell you what. That pick threw me for a loop. I just was not expecting offensive line in this draft, especially not early. After I saw where they went, but I didn't do a ton of homework on him during our pre-draft evaluations in the offensive line. So I went back and looked. I knew he was a big athletic kid, but I really wanted to see what he was all about. And I was even shocked as how athletic he was, how big he is, and the things that he's capable of doing. You got a guy that's 6'8", 310, 12 pounds. He ran a 4.9, a 4.8. He's got a great vertical. I mean, he's just a specimen, and he's got the long, the 34 and 3/4 inch arms, good footwork, all the tools for the making to make a prototypical offensive lineman in this day and age. But he's raw. You got a guy that's played at University of Northern Iowa. He hasn't played against top competition. He's definitely lacking some of the technical fundamentals to the position. But when you look at where we are, and I actually was kind of mad. I thought, oh, geez, like an offensive lineman. Like, that's not what we need right now. That's not going to help us right now. And then I started digging into it, and I'm saying to myself, outside of Darrell Williams and Deion Dawkins, we literally have nothing in waiting. Mm-hmm. And to now sit here and say, okay, well, we have a guy who's a project. He's raw, but he has all the fundamental tools in the makings to be a legitimate offensive tackle in this league for a very long time, and that he's there now. And if you start putting together the recipe, like Daniels was saying, we built for the future in this draft. And if you're going on that premise, we did a great job of doing that. You got, like I said, you have a guy within a year or two can be your starting right tackle and be a hell of a starting right tackle with all his tools. There's not many guys coming out of any draft at any point in time that are 6'8", 300+ pounds, run at 4'8", and have the athletic ability and the light feet that this kid has. So, I didn't like it at first, but that's kind of the perpetual pessimist in me. But if you stand back and look at the pick, it makes a lot of sense for what Bean and company were trying to achieve in this draft.
Absolutely. I was really glad that they got a swing tackle, a developmental tackle, something I felt like, could have been a target over the last 2 years, really. TFC, how did you feel about the addition of Spencer Brown?
Yeah, it kind of threw me for a loop, too, because I wasn't paying attention to tackle, seeing as they just re-signed Daryl Williams, and they've got, finally, for the first time, bookends at tackle. But then again, if you look at the contracts, they signed him really for a year. He has a cap hit this year, dead cap hit of $9.4 million. And, he got paid, and he is going to be the tackle this year and next year. But after that, it's a 3-year deal, and they can move on from him even next year, even after 2022. And Spencer Brown, when I went back and did my homework, reminds me of a more athletic Mike McGlinchey. Like, he's got great feet. He plays on the right side. He might be the most athletic right tackle once he becomes a starter in the NFL. I think he looks a little light. That concerns me a little bit. But again, all the guys that they drafted in this draft are pass protectors first, run blockers second. Now, you can be athletic and be a good run blocker, but he doesn't profile as a super mauler to me. And I don't really care, seeing as what they're building is a dangerous passing attack led by their franchise quarterback. This is smart team building. And kind of going back to the defensive end idea, one of these guys, and you can go back to AJ Epenesa as well, one of them better turn out to be a franchise defensive end. Like, you have now spent a lot of draft capital on these. One of these has to hit. You've given yourself a lot of opportunity. Athletic tackles, they took 2 of them. One of them should hit. That's hopefully one of them hits, and then you've made your money. Now you have a high value position that you have locked down, at least for the foreseeable future, with a rookie.
Yep.
Yeah, tremendous value in having players that could potentially pan out at premier positions. Keep that in mind. The Bills with their first 4 picks, they really picked premier positions, and that's really important, especially considering we have, like I mentioned earlier, Josh Allen's contract coming up. You also have these 2 guys that aren't good. Daryl Williams, like TFC mentioned, he's here for now, but he's not here forever, and you need to have a plan for forever. EJ, how did you feel about Spencer Brown?
Again, with the thesis in mind that Bean is told us that he's going to plan for the future, when I saw this pick and listening to people talk about him and watching this tape, I was like, okay, this makes sense. Again, as everyone mentioned, they said that he is probably the most athletic tackle to come out in like the past 10 years. All of his combine numbers were in the 90th percentiles. I mean, he is a stupid athletic tackle, and like everyone has said, Daryl Williams is here for now, but he also has an injury history too, Daryl Williams.
Yep.
So they signed Bobby Hart, but he sucks. Put it plainly, he sucks.
Very eloquently put.
If you guys are like, oh man, we got Bobby Hart in the waiting, I would be hard pressed to get behind that move because he is awful. Again, he has the worst PFF pass blocking grade in history that they have ever given for a tackle. I do not want him. I'd rather play Spencer Brown right now, as raw as he is, than play Bobby Hart. So having a backup plan, having a long-term plan is smart. You guys love Josh Allen, and we don't want to see Josh Allen on his back. So it will make sense to get a pass protector that you feel in 3 to 4 years that could be an average tackle or maybe an above average tackle with his traits. It will be wise to develop this guy and say, hey, Daryl Williams, if you get hurt or if you start tripping and you want more money, we got this guy right here. And you can move on and we can still be straight. So I love the planning because proper planning leads to poor performance. Poor performance, excuse me.
James, how did you feel about this mammoth of a man being the end of the Bills front?
I was excited. Why? Because when I look at it, I looked at like the guy said, I looked at it a month ago and was like, hey, if Daryl Williams get hurt or God forbid Deion Dawkins get hurt, we in trouble. So we got a guy who we really can develop. Let's pray both those guys can stay healthy. But we got a guy that they talk real highly of. And when his team opted out of 2020, it was about 15 programs in the Big 12 and the Big 10 that reached out and offered them opportunity to come play for them. So people think highly of him. I dug in there. I had a coach who coach at one of those schools reached out to me, said, "Man, you got your Bills signed a beast, or y'all drafted a beast." Blah 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 blah. He's a college coach. He said that they offered the dude to come play for them. So, I mean, I think that's going to be huge for us in the future. And what it tells me about these guys, they're investing in protecting Josh Allen. People get so caught up with having weapons for Josh Allen. No, we need to protect him first. Look at Russell Wilson up there. He's getting blasted up there in Seattle. But we don't want that to happen as our franchise quarterback. The most important thing, not the weapons, is protecting your franchise quarterback. You don't need him getting all these unnecessary hits. So you need to protect him. And they invested in that. And I love it. I absolutely love it.
Right.
Then it tells me that Darrell Williams is gone in 2 years. He's going to start 2021. He's going to start 22 more than likely. He's definitely gone for that third-year contract. He won't see it.
Right. I tend to agree. I also feel like now hear me out. It's not necessarily far-fetched, but I think Trey Adams definitely, the retirement of Trey Adams impacted the Bills' feeling about their offensive line a little. Like they had an extra body there, but they definitely added a few more, I feel like, because they lost Trey Adams. And that really was, in my eyes, their developmental tackle that they had on the roster. And I'm really glad that they added Spencer Brown. This guy, all of these guys have sung his praise for how athletic he is. How about this? TFC touched on how he looks a little light. He looks a little thin. He's 311 pounds and he benches 500. This guy he has a lot of talent. He has a lot of potential. And, I feel like the Bills potentially got a really good pick here in the third round, and they're afforded with the time of having 2 bookend tackles for at least the next 2 years to try and develop him into being that. And, drafting for the future, you see players like this come into town, and he could pan out. He could be a really good football player for a really long time for the Bills. And like James mentioned, protecting your quarterback is everything. And when you have a guy like Josh Allen, you don't want him going down, because then your whole season could potentially be going down the drain. And, they picked an offensive lineman with consecutive picks, the next one being offensive lineman Tommy Doyle. EJ, how did you feel about Tommy Doyle out of the University of Miami in Ohio?
Again, this was probably picking a player that most of us don't know about, or I don't know about. Let me speak for myself, that I don't know about, but that has the long-term plan in mind to develop him and say, hey, this is another guy with athletic traits. Like, hey, if somebody goes down, somebody wants a new contract, we have a guy in waiting that we can play and that we have developed and that we feel good about that can play and protect Josh Allen. Again, as Mallory mentioned, Josh Allen is the focal point of all this. He is what makes this Bills team go. He is the heartbeat of Buffalo. And keeping Josh Allen upright, clearly with those 2 picks, is clearly a priority for Bean and his regime. And I love to see that regimes build from the inside out. Like you said, having the weapons are cool, but if Josh Allen is consistently on his back or consistently having to make plays with his legs, remember Bills Mafia, Josh Allen's getting ready to make over $200 million. And I am always saying that I do not want to see Josh Allen consistently running around, consistently trying to stiff arm 5 linemen. So why not? Let's invest in good linemen, and let's hope that Josh Allen plays a little bit more smarter. But if you have linemen that can pass protect, it will mitigate some of that.
Absolutely. TFC, how did you feel about the Bills' 5th round pick?
So this is another team building thing. So this is how you extend your championship window. And I think that's a lot of what this was about, and why the tackle position wasn't on our radar, because we're thinking about 2021. Brandon Beane is thinking about, okay, so if 2021 doesn't hit, because the statistical likelihood of going to the Super Bowl is not high every year, how do you extend the window once you pay your quarterback? That's laying the groundwork for now. And yeah, these guys will be at the end of their deals. Doyle specifically, I'm not. He's stiff. That's my biggest problem. Is like he's super athletic, but he's got like some sort of like lumbar thing where he can't move his shoulders. So like a lot of that athleticism is really locked away. If they could somehow put some flexibility into his body, he is another prototype left tackle. And don't forget, like their guys that they have, Deion Dawkins was projected as a guard when he came into the NFL. So they don't have prototypes at the position, and they like guys that are that. Darrell Williams is not the most elite traitsy guy despite his size. Both of these guys are obvious traits picks. that they want to upgrade the abilities of the line, not just up, the contracts and stuff like that. They shot for upside with these guys. I think it's smart, but this particular player, I wasn't enamored with his video because he's leaning over and he's just leaning on people a lot, and that's going to get you beat. Like, that's going to get some oof sort of beats. Because I know, James, what's the worst thing when you have a hole and it's lined up and all of a sudden there's a guy in the hole because your left tackle fell over? Like, that's not good, right?
Listen, I don't want to have nightmares tonight, man. That's just not, that's not good. That's not good.
Because then you got all the meat coming right at you. Like, there's no more of that. You can't get by it. It's coming right at you.
Yeah. You got to put your big boy hat on in that situation.
Yeah.
Greg, what were your thoughts on the selection of Tommy Doyle?
I mean, this has got to the point of the draft here where this is where I put my foot down. So I don't agree with it. I understand what everybody said. Everyone made valid points about investing in the future and upgrading that position, adding depth, and building and protecting Josh Allen. I just don't think this was the guy. Yeah, he looks great. He's got a good athletic makeup, but I think when you look at him and Spencer Brown, and obviously Spencer Brown was taken a couple rounds before him, so they're different prospects. But if you're looking at the physical makeup, they're very similar. They're both 6'8", 300 plus pounds, and they're very athletic. Doyle doesn't play well. Doyle has a lot of technical and fundamental issues that are just, I don't know if they're correctable. And he plays very clumsy and oafishly. He doesn't, and the TFC said he's got this weird kind of hunchback of Notre Dame thing, and he's 6'8".
That's what I thought. Yeah.
So he's always looking like he's kind of crouching down to play with people half his size instead of really exploiting his size. So I just don't like that pick. I don't like the player. I don't like the pick. And I think that was a time to start going elsewhere. And I understand the mentality behind it and the mindset. I just don't like the prospect. I really don't. I didn't like his tape. And I went back and watched it because I wanted to make sure what I was seeing. And it just all jumped off at me. And, yeah, there's times where he kind of mauls people and he gets to the second level well. But I don't think we're necessarily drafting him to be this kind of road grading tackle. I think we're looking for, Josh Allen to throw the ball 50 times a game and have lockdown bookend tackles. And if that's what he's intended to be, he's not a very good pass blocker. He really struggles in that area. And despite all his length and athleticism, and I think that's what really kind of, and I understand he's a 5th round pick, but I think the value was better served addressing it elsewhere other than Doyle.
Now, before I go to James, I want to ask you guys, because you and TFC both said very similar things about Tommy Doyle, and I just have to ask you, do you feel like they envision him potentially moving on the inside?
No.
I mean,
no.
I just don't see a 6'8" interior lineman,
high.
and that's he plays extremely high, and he just doesn't bend. He has no bend to him at all. He's a leaner. I would think that would be a travesty. I mean, if you're going to draft that guy, he's got to be a tackle. I mean, I think he'd move to tight end before he'd move to guard, in my opinion.
Wow, you just shot that right down.
He's the sort of guy that I don't like when it comes to these guys. I just did a profile on a college prospect that's similar, but this kid who's 18 knows his limitations and is working around them. I feel like when I watch Tommy Doyle, he's just trying to force his way through these things. He's gonna maul people. He's gonna be bigger and he's gonna intimidate. And I do think that there is some of that you want. So you want a guy who is going to be a road grader, and I do think he could be that if he somehow unlocks all of the athleticism in his body. But that's one of those things where it's like I never saw a quarterback become accurate. So I could be entirely wrong and see a tackle become flexible. I don't know. It's a 5th round pick. It's a flyer on athleticism. I don't hate it, but yeah, when it comes to like other things, everyone just wanted a corner. Everyone, dear Lord, pick a corner,
just
and they waited to the 6th. Yeah. They waited the 6th round. So
or Des Newsome.
You can't. I don't think you can move him inside because I don't think he would win any leverage battles. He's going to get destroyed by guys that just get under his pads, and then all of that's really irrelevant.
Wow, you guys are not going to make the people feel good about this pick today. You
gotta tell it like it is.
He's got plenty of time to do yoga. Listen, do yoga, do Pilates, learn how to do some lumbar stretches. That's like he's got 2 years. You can figure it out then. And if not, then they've drafted another guy, and it doesn't matter.
Oh yeah. So James, what were your thoughts of the selection of Tommy Doyle?
This is really, in my opinion, this is a flyer. This is one of like, hey, let's see what this dude can do. More than, in my opinion, he's the one most likely to get cut out of all the draft picks. More than likely, he's gonna be the one who probably get cut in there, probably try to practice squad him. I just don't know a ton about him. Then when I looked into it after him getting drafted, just like I didn't see a lot of great things. I seen some good things about it, but I didn't see a lot of great things. But also, what it told me is if they're going to keep both those tackles, one of them is going to bump inside. And I think it's Northern Iowa guy. I think they may look at him as a future guard. More than likely not. But if you're going to draft two tackles, and Deion Dawkins is not going anywhere. He's a stud. So my thinking is one of them is going to bump inside, and I'm thinking it's Northern Iowa if they both were to make it. But more than likely, he may not make the roster, and they're probably going to try to practice squad.
Yeah, that's
James,
exactly
can I ask
what
you?
thought.
Can I ask you, James, how many 6'8" guards? Because this is a genuine question. Because to me, I've always had like a height cutoff in my head at 6'6". Can you do it at 6'8"? Can you make that work?
I mean, if you have freakish athletic ability like he do, why not? You know, that's how I look at it. If you got that type of athletic ability, why not? You know, I just look at it that way. There's not many people who have that athletic ability he has at 6'8" in his size. So if anybody can do it, why not him? That's how I look at it.
No, I all great talk, and you know, really, man, you just really put a damper on Tommy Doyle for me. I felt like because I really did feel like a couple of these guys were going to get caught, and if Tommy Doyle is going to be that player, I wouldn't be shocked given all the things you guys said. I did not get a chance to see his film, but all the things you're saying, the leverage, the leaning, the bad pass blocking, it sounds like he needs a lot of refinement. He needs a lot of work. He needs to be taught how to use his body, his length. It sounds like he really has no idea how to use any of those tools that he has. So certainly another project prospect, and they added another offensive player with their next pick being Marquez Stevenson. Now, Greg, we all know you're high on Marquez Stevenson, so the floor is yours.
I fell in love with the kid watching his film just based on the pure explosion that he offers. He's a home run hitter. He's got great vertical speed, and he had a ton of production at Houston. He was a 4-year guy there. I mean, he's recorded touchdowns from 90, 80, 70, 60, 50, and he's done it through the air. He's done it on reverses. He's done it on quick screens. He's turned 5-yard catches into home runs. So I think this offense, after losing out on John Brown and moving on from him, kind of lacks that vertical explosiveness, and I think drafting him here makes sense for that. And the kid is also an accomplished kick returner, which I know we went out and got the Powell guy there from Atlanta. We don't have any in stone kick returner, so I think he has that dimension as well. Now, while I do praise his speed and all the things that he's capable of doing, there are some limitations to his game, and I think that he's as fast as he is straight line. He does lack some of that shiftiness and that suddenness that he's gonna learn how to do that. And he's a terrible route runner.
Self-awareness is important with him.
Yeah. So I think he's going to have, he's going to need some coaching and some refinement. But you look at it, and if they're going to use him in a limited role and be that vertical guy and a kick returner, and almost kind of Isaiah Mckenzie him in a sense of, here's your 4 predetermined touches a game and see what you could do. I think that's fine. But you put him on a team that's got, he lacks route running ability, and really understanding. But you put him on a team with Stephon Diggs, Emmanuel Sanders, and Cole Beasley, 3 guys who are probably the best route runners in the NFL. So I think that's a good position for him to come in and kind of learn from these guys and absorb all the knowledge that they have and help his guys, his roughness around the edges where he can actually use that, elite 4.3 speed to help his team produce on offense.
EJ, how did you feel about the Bills' 5th-round edition?
Again, as Greg mentioned, he was the one who was pounding the table for Marquez Stevenson. We actually did something on our draft show about Marquez Stevenson because we thought he would be a target for the Bills. And as you see, we were correct in that he was an actual target for the Bills. But as Greg has mentioned, sounds like he does a lot of the same things that somebody else that's already on his team. So who is my least favorite Bill? Is Isaiah Mckenzie. And who did they bring in to probably take his spot? It's Marquez Stevenson. So Bills Mafia, wrap your minds around that Isaiah McKenzie may not make this team because if you bring somebody in that's bigger and that's probably just as fast as you, what do you think that they're saying to him? And Isaiah McKenzie even tweeted something out after that pick was made, so he know that his time may be up too. So just to look at it from a wide receiver perspective, his routes are not crisp. He cannot get off press coverage. But this is where Brian Dable comes in, and you will need to be able to scheme stuff up for him, get him open, get him down the field, and let him make some big plays. I could see him having a role such as that in here, and I think he will win the kick returning job because, as Greg mentioned, he is a burner, he is fast, he can take stuff to the house, and on top of that, if I'm not mistaken, he's 24 and he came out as a senior. So, I mean, he pretty much at this point is what he is. And that's the thing about, older prospects who come out when you're like 24, 23, like you probably are what you are at that point. So I think he can win the kick return job. I think he can make an impact on the offense if schemed right and Dable puts him in the right positions. And I really like this pick, just adding speed to this offense and just adding youth to this offense because we know the Bills don't value speed or athleticism on defense. So thank God they drafted it on offense.
Yeah, I was really happy they added another receiver. I felt like it was going to happen at some point in this draft. James, how did you feel about the Bills adding Marquez Stevenson?
Oh, I love it from a competition standpoint. When you look at Isaiah McKenzie, that's going to be direct competition with him, or there's room for both of them on the roster. We see. But, I mean, I think we did need to add some speed to the roster, to the wide receiver room. But one thing that people haven't talked much about that I guarantee they're talking a lot about in-house is we have maybe the top three wide receiver coach in the NFL who we're probably going to lose if he doesn't get promoted to OC job. That dude is well respected around the league. So if you want to come in, and he's not going to be relied on to come in and run crazy routes and beat people and, hey, come revive our passing game. I mean, he'll be the fifth, sixth best receiver, on this roster. So you get in there, you work with the top wide receiver coach who really drills route running and really is going to help him, excel in that area. Dude, you could potentially have a steal. Worst case scenario, you got a lot of speed, a gadget player, and a dynamic returner. I mean, I think it's a good choice.
TFC, how did you feel?
So I'm going to make two terrible jokes. One of them I'm recycling. So my wife is from Utah. And when I saw he was 24, I'm like, are we sure he's not from BYU? Did he go on a mission or something? Why is he so old? He was there with Ed Oliver. But, injuries and everything like that kept him there. And also that he was not, a draftable player and he had to kind of play out the string. I think some of the route running issues are correctable because he takes so many stutter steps to evade contact. He just needs to learn to play through contact. And when you're talking about getting off the press, it's not just on, off the line of scrimmage. He does it in the middle of his route, trying to get around guys instead of using his insane speed to get wherever he wants to go. So yeah, I'm envisioning if I'm Brian Dable, just crossing routes with this kid, just run him across the field away from people and just say, don't move, don't turn. I don't want you deking anybody out. Run in a straight line and Josh will get you the ball on the other hash. And that's going to be his role. And the kick returner, all that stuff. I was not a huge fan of his watching his tape because of all those things. He reminds me a little bit of a guy that came out of State College here a while ago, Deshaun Hamilton, where he did the same thing of you got great separation, but it took you 4 or 5 moves to do it. If you eliminate some of that stuff, streamline it, he has the upside. But again, it's all projection, and that's what you're doing in the 5th round. He was at least the one player that's going to have a chance to have an immediate impact in 2021 in a real way. I think you can say Bastian will be a rotational player. Rousseau will be a rotational player. This guy will be a rotational player, but he could lock down the kick return position, like you said, and might make big plays on offense where you see him catch a 60-yard pass. So that was exciting.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I really want to go off of what James was saying because Chad Hall was really why I felt like this was an excellent pick for the Bills. Because Chad Hall, he has been the Bills wide receiver coach for quite some time. I believe they hired him when Sean McDermott came. No, it was the year after because they lost Sanjay Law. That's who it was. Mm-hmm. And Marquez Stevenson, when I watched him, I see a lot of the same things that these guys were talking about. So many false steps, so many stutter steps, so many times he's just wasting movement. And, he's such an explosive player. He's such an athletic player that it really intrigues me as to what he could really become if he got some refinement with route running, if he got with Chad Hall, and, he constantly hammered it, repped it day after day. And you go to a situation like the Bills, a place where, you have Cole Beasley, you have Stephon Diggs, you have Emmanuel Sanders and Gabe Davis. You have 4 guys in front of you where there's no pressure. You're going to walk in there as a route runner. There's no pressure. You can walk in there and you can take your time and you can learn what you need to learn. There's no immediate get on the field and make your impact. And I think that is a really important factor to consider. I understand he's a 24-year-old prospect, but there could very well be some route running tactics that he just is ignorant to, that he just hasn't been taught. And, he's been such an athletic player that he's been getting by with his athleticism throughout his college career that it gives me a lot of excitement for his upside and what he can mean for the future for the Bills, because wide receiver was a position that, long-term, they don't really have many answers for aside from Stephon Diggs and Gabe Davis before this draft that was. Now you have Marquez Stevenson, you add him to the fold. And now, Cole Beasley, he only has 1 or 2 years left. Emmanuel Sanders, he wasn't added for the long term. And now you have a project fast, explosive wide receiver who could potentially turn into something 1 or 2 years down the line. It was certainly a smart addition. And I think they added the right player at this point in time in the draft. I think Marquez Stevenson, he has a lot of upside. And personally, I think he's going to be a really good football player. When I see him, I see a lot of potential, really. I struggle with comparison for him, but I liked what I saw on tape. I like what I see, what he can do. But with their 6th round pick, I also like Demar Hamlin a lot. I really like what he can bring to the secondary. I think he compares he has a lot of the same traits that the Bills safeties do, and I think he's a perfect fit for this defense. TFC, what did you think of the Bills' 6th round choice in Demar Hamlin?
Yeah, this was one I agree with you. I thought was a perfect fit. It was one that I didn't know if they were going to do because they're locked in with the players at safety. But this is the best 3rd safety they've had on the roster that they've drafted the entire time they've been here. This is why you're getting all these pit players coming through the Bills. Like it's basically they run a similar system in the sense that they run a lot of cover 2, cover 4, and they ask their safeties to do a lot. So they are involved in the slot. And Demar Hamlin had a lot of coverage in the slot. He had a lot of snaps in the slot, and he also was active in the box. So this is a guy who has a diverse set of skills, just like Micah Hyde and Jordan Poyer. Now, the production is, I don't know that he has all the physical skills to be a high-end safety, but that's the reason people were sleeping on Hyde and Poyer is they don't have the elite physical traits. What they do have is incredible football intelligence and the ability to do many things. That Greg had this guy in his final mock draft, and I thought it's too early. Maybe next year, the year after, they would have this guy, but he is definitely the guy that's going to be in training. I think he's probably the most NFL-ready player of the group, and I think it's a great fit.
I really agree. Greg, how did you feel about Demar Hamlin being drafted to the Bills?
Well, I felt absolutely great about him because I had pegged this guy as a perfect fit for the Bills in the 6th round in my mock draft because I am a genius, of course. But no,
everyone's very proud of you,
yeah,
Greg.
Thank you. I only had to do 100 mock drafts to get one right, so no. But no, in all honesty, I think the kid. You look at his tape and you look at his production. He's can do a lot of different things, and like TFC hit on, he fits what we do here. He's a Buffalo Bills safety in our defense. He's got long arms. He's got good enough size. He's played as a deep safety. He's played in the box. He's played some slot. So he's got a lot of experience. He's got a lot of ball production. And I personally think after you watch him, you look at his ball production and the things that he's able to do out there. If he ran a little bit better, I think if he had a little bit more athleticism, I think you're talking about a late 2nd round type of a pick. So, I think he's got some hindrances with his athleticism. I don't think he's, got all the speed in the world to cover deep downfield, but he's got such great instincts. He's got such intellect and understanding of what goes on. I think he's a 4-year player, so he's comes to the NFL, comes to the Bills with a ton of experience, ton of knowledge, and I like when he got drafted. I saw his clip, and I get behind that 100%. I just he's going to give it his all, and he's going to work his behind off, and I love those kind of players. I like those late round guys that are just thankful for that chance, and they're going to put it all out there. And I think he's got a ton of ability, and I think the kid could help us. On special teams, I think he could be a package type of a safety, and I think he's going to give us a real quality depth and something that we could build around moving forward.
James, how did you feel about Damar Hamlin?
These guys called it right out. I loved it. I knew a little bit about him, just for following college ball, and I got high school kids that I trained that kind of went on to college, and got a player over there at Pitt, so I knew a little bit about him, and he's going to make the roster. He's going to make this roster, and I think he's going to have a really, really good career. I think he's going to be one of them dudes that we look back 3 years from now, like, how did that dude fall to the 6th round? And, sometimes, you got these scouts and these GMs who fall in love with numbers sometimes, combine numbers and all that other good stuff, and they see, well, this guy didn't run that fast, so I'm going to take this guy who tape isn't as good, but he's a little more athletic, and that's how you end up getting bust. And the kid like this is going to come out, and I think he's going to play really, really well for us, and I'm happy we got him. I'm happy.
As am I. EJ, how did you feel about Damar Hamlin?
I love the pick. I love his mentality first and foremost. If you saw his quote when he got drafted, he said he don't care if he had to be the water boy. He just want to contribute in some way, and I like his mentality because, like everyone said, that means he's just going to work. He played with Dane Jackson. That Pitt defense seems to have a lot of draft picks on it. They had Rashad Weaver that go. They had Patrick Jones that got drafted also. So there's a lot of pro talent, that's on this that was on that Pitt roster. And then also, as TFC mentioned in the beginning, he does a lot of the same things that Jordan Poyer does. And our owner Jeremy Turner was telling me before, he was like, you guys might want to touch on safeties in your draft show because Hyde and Poyer are both signed for the next 2 years. So, like, who do we have in waiting? If they get hurt, if they move on, like, who else do we have in waiting? And I couldn't answer that. Demar just went to the Lions. So, I mean, this guy, Damar Hamlin could come in, like you said, and start and be a contributor day one, and maybe he might be your future, free safety or box safety, 2 or 3 years down the line.
And these guys, they have resounding praise for Damar Hamlin. And I can't do anything but share the same sentiments. Damar Hamlin, when I watched his tape, I really felt so bad because the last thing I want to do is compare players that the Bills draft to players that are already on the roster. I hate doing that. I think it's the most cliche thing in the world. But I could not avoid but feel like I'm watching Micah Hyde when he came to Green Bay. I felt a lot. That's really what I saw. A lot. He's a leader. He jumps off the film. He's a player that players, they like. He's a leader of men, and I really like that about Damar Hamlin. I think he's going to be a contributor. I think, I think he has an outside chance to potentially earn the nickel cornerback role in this defense this year.
Yeah.
I think that's a really something that a lot of people are overlooking. Like EJ said, he's just looking for some way to contribute, and I feel like if he can come out there and impress enough in camp, he really has a shot. You're really looking at a lot of excuse me. There's a good chance you're looking at 2 Pitt defensive backs starting on this defense come the regular season. And Damar Hamlin, I feel like he has a lot of upside. I feel like he's a player that's going to be in Buffalo for a long time. I think he's going to get a second contract here. I really do. And with their other 6th round pick, they drafted Rashad Wildgoose. Some name right there, right? Rashad Wildgoose. Now, TFC, how did you feel about Rashad Wildgoose, the first cornerback that the team drafted?
So he's a sleeper because he didn't play in 2020. He opted out, and I think he had an injury at some point earlier in his career as well. So yeah, he played a lot at Wisconsin, and I like his position versatility. This is a guy who played both boundary and slot corner for Wisconsin whenever they needed him. He had sub packages. He played on the boundary if it was a 2 wide set. And he, as Brandon Beane said, they want guys that tackle. They want corners that are a part of the run game. And he's another guy who's going to be in competition with Terron Johnson for that nickel corner position. And truthfully, I would rather fix that position than worry about cornerback 2, given what the rest of the division did this year. Because Levi Wallace, we know what he is. We know that he is average to slightly above average corner in the NFL. He's going to lose sometimes on athleticism. He's going to lose sometimes, but in the slot, you now have Elijah Moore and you have Jalen Waddle. Those are two highly skilled athletic freaks of at the position where they're super electric, super elusive. So Wild Goose he triggers downhill really well. He's a guy that can play man coverage, and he's not the best athlete in the world. He doesn't turn well, but I think in his zone system or when he's able to, get his hands on guys, he plays well. So I think those are all things the Bills are looking for, and they needed to address that slot corner position, and they got a couple of guys they can mix and match and find the right answer.
Absolutely. EJ, how did you feel about Rashad Wild Goose?
I listened to the PFF 2-for-1 Drafts podcast, and Mike Renner, PFF Mike Renner, he loves Rashad Wild Goose. He constantly talked about him all the time. So when the Bills picked him, I was kind of familiar with him, but he always stated that, Rashad Wild Goose, really, besides the fact that he opted out this year, he really didn't get the opportunity to show off his skills because Wisconsin runs a zone-heavy scheme, and he actually is more of a man corner than a zone corner. And to be honest, my opinion, I don't think the Bills have any great man corners on here, and there's a lot of corners that excel in zone coverage. So they probably drafted a guy who could actually be good in man coverage. He had 10 forced incompletions, and then he only given up 11 catches his whole college career. So he has some ball production. So it was nice to see them actually add a corner that can get it done in man coverage.
Yeah, actually make plays on the ball. Yep, yeah. That's what I liked about him too.
I can tend to agree with you there, EJ. I felt like that was the deficiency with the Bills' defensive backfield, and I'm really glad that Rashad Wild Goose is capable of bringing that to the defense. But, Greg, how did you feel about the addition of Rashad Wild Goose?
I mean, you're talking a day 3 pick, late-round pick, and you got a guy who didn't play a ton of football. He opted out. I think he had an injury early on. So what there is to see of the kid, I like him. He's aggressive. He's got a good size. I don't know what his pro day numbers were exactly, but he plays
average.
Yeah, I mean he plays, like a bigger bodied corner. But I think it falls in line. His selection falls in line. I think with the desire to bring competition to that slot corner position, and I think if you're talking Bills fans, I think Bills fans are enamored with Terron Johnson because of that 100-yard interception return, and that somehow kind of glosses over 2 years of mediocrity from him. But I think he was a liability a lot of times in the pass coverage, and we need to get somebody to step up and do that. So, you're taking a flyer on a guy on a day 3, and, if it doesn't pan out, it doesn't pan out. And if he could live up to some of his hype and some of his skills. I mean, look, we had Dane Jackson last year that was on nobody's radar, that nobody cared about. And as the season progressed, we saw some flashes from him, and now we're possibly talking about him being our go-to starting corner. Yeah. And, so Wild Goose could be in that thing or in the mix, or he could, be looking for another job come September.
Yeah.
Sidebar, look at Dane Jackson's tape on the Arizona game. Has a really good rep against DeAndre Hopkins in the red zone. That's what give me. If you want some excitement from your corner for Dane Jackson, look at that rep.
Oh, no, I'm high on Dane Jackson, but I'm saying when he got drafted, none of us were saying, wow, this is going to be the guy that's going to take that spot. So, Wild Goose could fall into that line as a guy that, we're not exactly enamored with, but he can come out and have a great camp and move up the depth chart. And who knows, game 6 of the season could do the same thing Dane Jackson was doing this year.
I definitely knew in this draft that I wanted them to see them add another cornerback, at least one. I was kind of indifferent as to when. I know EJ was high on them drafting a corner early. I wasn't necessarily. I wasn't really. Like I said, I was indifferent on when they would draft a corner, and I was glad they added one. I think Wild Goose has potential. He could, like Greg mentioned, he could develop into potentially a player like a Dane Jackson who contributes at some point. Maybe we're not necessarily expecting a lot out of him, but you don't really expect a lot out of 6th-round draft picks. And he's coming here, and hopefully Leslie Frazier and Sean McDermott, 2 defensive back-oriented coaches, they could potentially turn this guy into something for their defense. James, how did you feel about Rashad Wild Goose?
I like it. Bringing some competition. When I heard that he's more of a man corner, I'm like, okay, cool. We can kind of bring him in and compete with Terron Johnson and kind of, competition brings out the best in us all. Well, that's the type of players you should want on your roster. But I mean, I'm open to it. I don't know a ton about him. To be honest with you, but I think we needed to add a corner for competition. I'm not a guy that's pushing for the number 2 corner. I don't think it's big as a hole or a void as a lot of people do. I think we can definitely get by with Levi Wallace, and I think Dane Jackson really has a bright future. But you know, you want to bring somebody in that can compete and play some man coverage, and I think that was a good job of doing that, not bringing in a corner who played mostly zone in college. So hey, let's do it. Let's see what he can do and help us out. If not, hey, it don't work out. 6th round pick. You know how that goes.
Right. Absolutely. In their last pick, they drafted an interior offensive lineman out of Texas Tech, Jack Anderson. I don't know a lot about Jack Anderson. TFC, can you help me out? What do you know about Jack Anderson? What can he potentially provide? Is he going to make the roster, or is he going to be a practice squad player here in year one?
Honestly, he's better than Ike Bucker, which is a thing for a depth player. Just another guy that I definitely think that they're going to be shifting more to an exclusive zone blocking system, because at Texas Tech, that was basically all he was doing is zone blocking. And he got better at it over time, but he's got some woof misses on tape. Like just woof. Like he's just missing a guy completely. Like he's supposed to be down blocking on somebody and they're in the backfield sort of things. But as a pass blocker, he's a good pass blocker. And again, that's what they're looking for. Athletic linemen who can move and pass protect. So he fits that mold, but there's just some stuff where I'm like, I don't know if you really want him blocking for your running backs. James, another guy that would give you nightmares.
Greg, how did you feel about Jack Anderson?
Yeah, I mean, he's somebody I looked at all the way through, as a day 3 type of target, because I think we're all in agreement that, we need to find some sort of starting level caliber guards, whatever the combination is going to be. But Jack Anderson was a 5-star recruit. He was one of Texas Tech's, top recruits of all time, and he was projected to be, one of the best guards. He was a guard in high school. He was a guard only. He was a guard at Texas Tech. So that's all he knows. And he's mentioned he could bump over and play center if need be. But he's not someone that you can experiment across the line with. He's got decent size and decent intangibles, but like TFC said, you watch some reps as a pass blocker. He mirrors well, he moves well, but as a run blocker, there's some reps where he loses a lot. So I think as a 7th round guy, someone to come in here and add some competition and have some upside with. I think it's a 7th round pick, and he might make the team, he might not. But you said Ike Bodiger is our depth player, and I forget the other guy from Tennessee there. So we don't have a tremendous amount of talent in the waiting at the guard position, and we have to get that right. So, like I said, if he makes the team, great. If not, I don't think any of us are going to shed any tears for Jack Anderson.
Now, Greg, you touched on it. You say you don't have a tremendous amount of talent waiting for you at guard, but what I will say is you have a tremendous amount of players right now on that offensive line. And I want to ask James, how do you feel all of the competition and that this team has added in the trenches, both sides of the ball? Because that's really, when I saw them add a 3rd defensive or offensive lineman in the draft, that was what hit me. They signed 3 offensive linemen. They draft 3 offensive linemen. They're adding competition, and they're assuming the best 5 will rise to the top. How do you feel about what the Bills are doing up front on both sides of the ball?
I'm a running back. I love it. I love it. I'm jumping for joy. You cannot win at a high level, at any level of football, if you can't win in the trenches. And they made that a priority, and I love it. Jack Anderson, when you look at it, Greg, you stole my thunder. He was a 5-star recruit, one of the best linemen in the country coming out of high school. He's played a lot of football at Texas Tech. And what I honestly think, they're going to train him to play center and guard. He's going to be that type of guy for him. In my opinion, I could be wrong, but I'm willing to bet money that they train him to play some center and guard, even though he's only played guard. I'm willing to bet they kind of do something like that with him. I don't think he'll touch the field too much. I think he'll be kind of that guy who we have him active. Well, hopefully, if things work out, you'll have him active on game day as a rotational guy. I think Cody Ford is going to start at that left guard, and I actually think Cody Ford is going to excel. A lot of people aren't high on him. I think he's going to excel. I think he's going to do really well. But Jack Anderson, a depth guy that you can kind of train to play center, guard, and kind of move around like that. And who knows? He may play up to his potential, that 5-star recruit thing, and might end up being a stud. It's a 7th round flyer. So we'll see what happens.
EJ, what were your thoughts on the Bills' last selection?
Actually, the Bills been looking at Jack Anderson since the Senior Bowl. They had a lot of conversations with him, and that was reported by Cover One. They had said that Jack Anderson was on the Bills' radar, and just for that very reason, you guys said he's a good zone blocker, and that's a lot of what he did at Texas Tech, and he's a solid pass protector too. And I can see him having some positional versatility. I can see him at some point, honestly, replacing John Feliciano. Everyone really here isn't really high on John Feliciano. But, Jack Anderson may be that guy, that 7th-round flyer that, comes around and starts. But to look at it in a holistic view, the Bills, again, just adding, competition at key positions. And like you said, the best 5, will rise to the top and hopefully protect Josh Allen and get some movement in the run game. So if, the Bills can, get a balanced attack this year and Jack Anderson helps that, I'm all for this pick.
I don't think you're going to see a balanced attack this year, but I think you will see improvement in the trenches with all the players that they have added. I think it's going to make the whole offensive line better, really. And I think a lot of what they've done, I felt really good about what the Bills did in this draft. I felt like they were a good football team before the draft, and I felt like they were a much, much better team, more well-rounded team after the draft. I want to go around the horn and get everyone's quick draft grades for the overall draft grade for the Bills in this draft. TFC, how did you feel? What would you give them from F to A?
B minus. I just, the Rousseau pick to me, like as I think it was EJ said, is kind of an incomplete because your first pick is such a wild card where he could be. I think somebody comped him to Carlos Dunlap. Like if that's his high end, Carlos Dunlap is a good pass rusher. I wouldn't say he's an elite pass rusher, but he's a good one. Maybe it's a little better than that, but I don't know that it is. So that to me is tough because again, it's such a crazy evaluation of a guy who played 1 year at defensive end, opted out, and then was the 30th overall pick in the NFL draft. I'm not saying he shouldn't have opted out. I'm just saying that like if you're going small sample size and it's that or a guy who played in 2020, good or bad, as I'm going to once again have a stump speech for Odafe Owe, that would have been my pick because now you have versatility of diversity rather than just having everyone have the same set of skills at the edge position. So to me, B minus. A lot of their moves were good. Demar Hamlin, I think, is awesome, but yeah, B minus.
EJ, how'd you feel?
The Gregory Rousseau pick, that's the stickler for me because again, I gotta go incomplete on just him because he is the wild card of this draft. We look back at it for 3 years from now and we like he is the one that will sway this draft left or right for us, and he is such a wild card. He is not going to contribute right away, but if he could ever reach anything close to his ceiling, we looking at this draft like, man, the Bills did their thing in this draft because if he can become a top 10, top 15 pass rusher, reaching his ceiling, then I like it. I like the Rashad Wild Goose pick. I like bringing in some competition at corner. But again, just to go back to the Rousseau point one time, you got Gregory Rousseau when you could have got Asante Samuel Jr., when you could have got another player. And that's always the thing about the draft. The draft is about value. So is Gregory Rousseau going to bring the value long term that the Bills are looking for? That's the key to this. But if I have to give it a grade, I'll give it a B because Bream already prepped us that he was looking towards the future.
Greg, what would you have to give the Bills for a grade this year?
Me personally, I would go C+. And I think you analyze every pick and what they did. I think they left some really good players on the board that I think made more sense than what they went with. And if you look at their first 4 picks, and I understand they're looking to build for the future, but I think they could have done that a little bit differently. Your first 4 picks, there's probably only one player in Carlos Basham who's NFL ready. You took on a lot of players who need work, who are gambles. And everyone could say, the draft is a gamble. Everyone's a gamble. I get that. But in terms of what you're grading and what you're looking at and what the player has done, I think we took on a lot of potential and a lot of what ifs. And if this hits and that hits, and I don't feel great about that because we haven't done very well with those guys up till now. Tremaine Edmonds is a question mark. I think Ed Oliver is a question mark. AJ Epinesa is a question mark. Cody Ford is a question mark. So I don't feel good going into the now and the future with a bunch of question mark type players. Now, Daniel said if these dudes hit, then we're talking about one of the greatest draft classes in the history of the Bills organization. But I don't think we're going to see all these guys hit. And I have to go C plus because of too much potential draft picks. Guys with high ceilings and hopes, and not enough NFL ready players, and the guys that we left on the board when we took those guys. If we took Russo, and I don't want to keep going on, but if we took Russo and there was really nothing else there, hey, the potential is there. But I think there was better options there at 30, especially when you came back and got Basham. I think we all would feel better if we got Asante Samuel at 30 and Basham at 61. Or
then we're talking about a way different draft, yes.
But that's what I'm saying. I think that there was better players available at 30 who were more NFL ready, could contribute in a need. And if you got Basham at 61, I think I think we're talking about an A draft class for me. Yep. But if it is the way it is, I say C plus.
Okay, yeah. James, how did you feel? What would you give the Bills as a grade?
I'm gonna give them a solid B. I like it. I kind of look at it a little bit different. I look at it just knowing from being in that position. I would much rather be in a situation. Obviously, I'm a competitor. I want to play. I would love to be in a situation. And guys usually thrive when they're in a situation, when you put them in a situation where they can get there, they can learn, get their feet wet, kind of, adapt to life as a professional athlete. People fail to realize the off the field thing is a huge thing, adjusting to family members pulling you this type of way. You're moving to a new town. All of this while adapting to professional football. So when you get that, put all that into account, and then you got a great coaching staff, I believe, here in Buffalo. I think they trust in that coaching staff and trust in developing these guys. Eric Washington is our defensive line coach, who was a defensive coordinator in this league for a few years. And I think they're putting their trust in him and say, okay, develop this defensive line, help keep Tremaine Edmonds clean a little bit. We don't want dudes getting their ass kicked up front and then Tremaine Edmonds fighting off 2-3 linemen to go make plays. Then people are saying he's underachieving, which I think is crazy, but that's another talk. Offensive line, you address the offensive line, you put a lot of depth there saying, okay, we know Josh Allen is our future. We've been looking for a franchise quarterback for 20 plus years. We got one. We're not going to fail him and fail to protect him. So let's load up the offensive line. Let's protect him. You added a speed guy. You added a corner who may be able to compete. So I like it. I'll give it a solid B because so many guys are up in the air. I will give it A-, but so many guys is up in the air, you just don't know. Obviously, all of them won't pan out. That's just not realistic. Nobody draft, everybody pans out. That's just not realistic. But, like I said, I just love what they did and trusting in their staff. Hey, you paid to develop these guys. Let's see what you can do.
James convinced me. I'm changing to a B.
They had a good draft though. Like I like them. Like I said, if they thought that the pass rush was an issue, throw the kitchen sink at it and just get a bunch of pass rushes and see where they fall. Like you said, James, why not? You know what I mean?
Yeah,
why not just
I know I have two players I know that played at Miami, that play at the U, and I hit them up and I asked them about Rousseau, both of them at the same time. Both said he's an awesome dude. Number one. They said he's an awesome person. Like, yo, he great dude. Second, they said, yo, he a stud. Dude is a stud. And these dudes, the same type of people that tell me if somebody was not good, they'll say, yo, Coach Mal, nah, he ain't it. He athletic, but he not it. Both of them said exact words. He's a stud. So I'm gonna trust them. They haven't lied to me yet. So they both said he's a stud and he's a great person. So let's see what happens. I mean, obviously he got to put up or shut up, but I'm excited to see what he's gonna do.
James,
Let's
keep
go,
talking.
Mallory.
You're making me feel better. Keep going.
Mallory,
I'm feeling
Mallory
good.
with the inside info. Let's go, Mallory.
Yeah, man. I feel better already. Thank you.
No, I mean, I kind of look at it different than everybody. I mean, when people was big on Asante Samuel Jr., it's like I kind of look at it as like, yo, he's a good football player, but if you're that good, people are not going to just keep passing on you, picking other corners ahead. So it's something there that's just not right. I don't know what it is, obviously.
It's the size. I mean, he's 5'10". That's why they was passing on him.
Dude, that's a decent sized corner. That's not a small corner. 5'10".
I know. I agree with you. But that's what they were saying why they were passing on him, because he 5'10" and compared to grabbing Greg Newsome, who's 6'1", or grabbing Caleb Farley, who's 6'2". I mean, the size thing. That's what they were saying. I like Asante Samuel. That's my guy.
I call BS when I hear that. what they release. I call BS with that. But I mean, you never know. I mean, I just good corners. I don't care if you can find a stud corner who's 5'8". You know, I mean, if you can ball, you can ball. At corner, you got leeway with size because if you can flip them hips, you can flip them hips. And if you 5'8" or 6 foot, it is what it is. So
Preach.
I mean, you can't really the cornerback thing, that the size thing don't do it for me. You know, it's you can have a dude. I'm not gonna name his name. I was in Tampa with him. Great size and all that, but he was a bum. You know what I mean? He's 6'1", he's a bum. You know what I'm saying? But you got a dude that's 5'9". We have Rondé Barber who's locking people up. So I mean, the corner, the size thing don't really do it for me with at corner.
Yeah, no, great stuff, guys. I really feel good about the direction of the team. There was things I needed to see this team add this past weekend, and they added in those areas. And now it's just a matter of time. It's a matter of coaching. It's a matter of execution. It's a matter of these players, you know, putting their talents and putting the work in behind the scenes and seeing their talents come to fruition and seeing this team's investments come to fruition as well. As we said, not all picks hit, not all picks are bust. So that's really what this draft hindsight is going to be indicative or dependent of how these players are 2-3 years down the line. There was a lot of potential drafted in this draft. That's one thing that, you know, all of us kind of said throughout the entire show. A lot of potential, a lot of upside, but there's a lot of ifs as well that come along with a draft of this nature. I think there's definitely a clear-cut direction with this draft that they were drafting for the future, like Brandon Beane said in his presser. And, you know, that's good. You want to have direction. You want to have purpose with what you're doing. But, you know, I am a person that always likes seeing the players, the investments that they make, you know, impact now. So personally, I wasn't really huge on it. I had to do some talking. I had to talk myself into it. I had to watch the film. I had to do something to make myself feel better. I had to evaluate what these players were and are and what they could be. And this could be a really good draft. It also could be a really bad one as well. And, you know, only time will tell, and we'll see. But, you know, I think the Bills are on their way to another Super Bowl competitive season. I think they're going to compete for a championship this year, and I don't think this draft hindered them in that effort at all.
Let me ask the question. Can I ask the question?
Absolutely.
If Russo makes 2 Pro Bowls in his career, would y'all consider him a bust?
2 Pro Bowls in his first 4 years, or 2 Pro Bowls in his career?
2 Pro Bowls in his career. If he plays 10 years and make 2 Pro Bowls and have a side, and other seasons are pretty.
That's that crap they do now, where they're having like 15 different alternates, and he gets a Pro Bowl. Like, if he makes a Pro Bowl straight up twice,
are both of those Pro Bowls with Buffalo?
Aaron Maven got 10 sacks with the Jets.
If he makes 2 Pro Bowls as a Buffalo Bill, do you consider his career a bust?
No,
I don't put a lot of stock into the Pro Bowl as much as I do being an All-Pro player. I think there's a lot of fan favoritism and stuff like that, so I don't put a whole bunch of stock into a Pro Bowl player. I think it's a nice credit, but I'm not sold on that as being an accolade that determines if someone's great or not.
But
had a great year.
But to James' point,
I'm not saying great. I'm saying a bust. You don't got to be a great player to not be considered a bust.
No, I think if he had a good enough season or two in his time in Buffalo to do those things and be good enough to be on a Pro Bowl team, I wouldn't consider him a bust. But I think there's different levels of expectations.
Yeah,
Okay,
and he's the 30th overall pick, right? So it's not like he was a top 5 pick. This was a guy picked at the top end of round 2. And to your point of like, was he good enough that year to like be legitimately good in an all pro? Not like he was the 3rd alternate. Like he had 2 really good seasons. To me, that's the end of it. That's the bottom end of that's not worth it.
Even if you're a 3rd alternate, you do realize that you in the top tier at your position. You do know that, right?
True.
I mean, Evan Ingram made the Pro Bowl, and he had the worst season in his career. Like, I'm with Greg. Like, I'm not putting no stock in that.
Simple question. I mean, you still top tier in your position. That's all I'm saying.
I don't know, because Shaq Lawson never made a Pro Bowl with the Bills, and he wasn't. I wouldn't call Shaq a bust. I really wouldn't.
Not at all.
True.
Why I'm
Shaq
saying
Lawson
that?
didn't make a Pro Bowl, but he wasn't a bust. So both things can be true. So.
Well, what I'm kind of saying, I know it's a little off topic. I'm saying if he makes 2 Pro Bowls, will we consider him a bust? Because people riding Tremaine Edmonds, and he's made 2 in 3 years. I'm just
Wait, hold on. See, now he about to start this. Hold on.
No, we can't do
Listen.
it. We can't.
Okay,
I
I was about
bed
to say,
soon.
hold on.
We can't
Yeah,
do
all
it.
right.
We can't do it.
'Cause I was
I'm just throwing it out
getting
there.
ready to
I wouldn't
go
be mad
in,
if you
man.
made
Oh,
it.
See,
no.
can I pose a question to the group?
By the way, you could do it if you want, but I gotta go soon.
Just now, comparing our draft to the rest of the divisions, obviously we have our own roster and we are where we are. Do we feel that we've increased our position against the AFC East, or do we feel that other teams caught up to us this offseason?
I think the Jets got better. Jets definitely got better.
I don't think they did.
I think they got better.
I think the
Most
draft
certainly.
is a little overhyped. I don't think one draft can change it that much. I think it can help. But
No, what I'm saying between the offseason acquisitions and the draft.
I get it. I
Did
just
we
don't
pull
think
away?
so.
Yeah.
I don't think so, especially with chemistry with the weird off seasons now. I don't think so.
Yeah, I don't think so either. But we'll see. This is a really we'll see draft. It's not something we can come to a conclusion on right now. A draft never is. You're going to have to wait a couple years for this one. I think you're going to have to wait more than one. Absolutely. Before we get out of here, I want these guys to tell you where you can find them. All of their Twitter handles will be in the description below. If you want to find them, they're going to tell you where you can find them. But their Twitter handle will be in the description below in a link. You'll just click on it, and it'll take you right to their Twitter profile. You can follow them right there. So, Greg, first things first, tell the people where they can find you if they choose to.
Well, if you choose to find me to talk, chat, or argue with me on anything, it's at the SportsBully1 on Twitter.
EJ?
Yeah, I interact with Bills Mafia every day. I'm here for all the hot takes, and if you want to interact with me, like it says down there, at eDaniel77 on Twitter, I'm there almost every day looking to interact with Bills Mafia.
James, how about you?
On Twitter, I'm NFL JMao2 on Twitter. Instagram JMao2. Hit me up. I'm always willing to talk some ball.
TFC?
Yeah, Twitter at Thomas Frank Carr. Also, if you're into Penn State sports, I have a Penn State podcast. It's called Let Me Be Frank. If you want to search for that anywhere you get podcasts, it's Let Me Be T Frank, because Let Me Be Frank's a great name and it was taken 1,000 times over. So if you search Let Me Be T Frank where you get your podcast, you get that. Or if you're on YouTube, it's at For the Bloggy. It's a blog on Penn State football, so it's all over the place. But of course, if I talk Bill stuff, it's here at Thomas Frank Carr and on Cold Front Report.
And if you'd like to find me, you can find me on Twitter at CFR Clayton. And be sure to follow us on all platforms. On Twitter, it's at Cold Front Report. Instagram, it's at Cold Front Report _Bills News. And on be sure to like us on Facebook as well, Buffalo Bills Cold Front Report. And subscribe on YouTube, Cold Front Report. I want to thank everybody for watching. I want to thank these gentlemen for sitting on here with me and talking about the Bills draft. It was a really good draft. It was a lot of fun. I always have fun chopping it up with these guys. They're all really good at what they do, and the analysis is always great. And, there's fun conversation, there's arguments, there's debates, there's everything you can possibly want in sports discussion right here on Cold Front Report. And I want to thank everybody for watching. Thank you for listening. I hope to see you again. Stay safe, stay healthy, and go Bills.